Welcome back. This is a picture I was looking to correct. It's not in bad condition, it's a little spotty, but some of those bright spots on the bottom are left, and in the middle of the picture I think I can get a little bit more detail out of. So the first thing to do is to correct the crooked tilt of this scan. Now I could just use the ruler here, which is probably what I should have done, but I used the perspective crop tool. It does a pretty good job, but there is a possibility you can distort the base image if you do this. So from a levels perspective, you can see the image is pretty good in terms of the histogram here. Pretty good range of detail, even though this is just a JPEG. But what I like to do first is put a levels adjustment layer. You can see the same histogram here, but it's now non-destructive because it's on the it's a layer. So just to see what I'm doing, I'll make it really dark, and then in the mask get a paintbrush, and you can see, I think I've got smoothing on my brush here, just hang on. So you can see I can use the mask to paint off that adjustment layer. So I'll turn it all to black so it has no effect on the image, and then selecting a white paintbrush and a very low opacity, I can start to, with making sure I have a soft brush, start to paint some of that adjustment. So I'm not painting color, I'm painting an adjustment to the blacks and whites of the image. And you can see even in the baby's onesie, this little outfit, there's some detail to be had. So I'm just finding spaces or areas in the picture that I want to draw out some more detail. Now I could try and paint the vertical line that's in the center of the image, but I'll find a different way around for that. What I'll do is put another levels on top, correct that again, making it obviously dark or light, and then use a grad tool. Now a gradient in the mask can be left or right, or a circle. This one I'm selecting is kind of ping pong. It sort of goes dark to light to dark, or whichever way you want to work it. It's going to take me a moment to realize my levels are set wrong here. It's not doing what I thought it was going to do. Come on Glenn, let the penny drop. Can't hurt to help line it up first. No, come on, there you go. Now I should have made it darker, and now you can see I can adjust the midpoint of that image and almost make that bright line disappear by using this gradient to control what part of the image is adjusted. So there you go. Now I also think that gradient has made the guy's face too dark in the center. You can almost see a dark stripe now. So I'm going to paint into that gradient with a little bit of a black paintbrush in the mask, just to remove that adjustment to his face, and I think that's much better. Again, just checking my levels, making sure I have lovely contrast range. Now onto the spot healing brush to start getting rid of some of the dots. One of the things it's also nice to do is to get rid of some of the overexposed corners on some of the images. I think modern pictures don't seem to have that, so getting rid of that sort of glare on the very edge of frame really sharpens up a picture. The detail here is not so critical that you can't just brush over the edge and have it interpolate. Already you can see we've improved it quite a bit. So opening up neural filters, this is in Photoshop Beta again, turning on the photo restoration, you can see there that it's disabled the enhanced face option. Don't know why it does that sometimes, but at the moment it's currently not an option on some photographs. But even with that off, you can see the software's done a pretty good job of removing some of the noise from the image, evened out some of the tone. And I always make sure to put these adjustments on a new layer, not the current layer, so that I can assess after I've exited the neural filter whether I want to put it on at 100% or just a little bit. Sometimes I mix it back, but with this opacity slider, and merge it down when I'm happy. Now, onto the tedious task of despotting, which I actually really like anyway. You can see sometimes it's not great. It'll grab a little bit of tone from other areas in the image, and it can be a little hard to fix some of those things. So you have to get your brush nice and small or revert to painting. I presume that's a bracelet on her arm, so I won't touch that. You can see there a little problem spot. A little hard to fix sometimes, so you'll see that I'll just go to a straight paintbrush brush tool, and then with a very, very low opacity sample the colours either side of that the dot, and just paint it away. You get a much cleaner result. Very much how we used to do it before all these new tools. Alright, back to the spot healing brush. Some of these areas aren't quite so critical. You can be a little more free with the brush strokes here. It becomes difficult on landscapes to sort of know what's a dot and what's a stone, what we should leave, what we should keep, what's going to draw your attention away from the subjects. So I do tend to go a little bit more overboard on removing some of that stuff. see if I'm not happy with a brush stroke. Quite often I'll just undo it and have another go, and undo it and have another go, and then if 2 or 3 strokes don't do it, I'll revert back to paintbrush. Brush tool, select the colour beside it, paint it out. And then back to spot healing brush again. I really don't like that little black bush that's right on the grass in the middle there, but I left it. Just checking levels again. Deciding that there's a few more little areas we could paint a tiny bit more contrast in. You can sort of see here on the grass, it's a low contrast area. So again, selecting the mask and then adjusting the contrast. Get rid of some of that fogginess that's still present in the image. And also trying to draw the eye to the center of frame by vignetting some of the pale edges in the image. Now going back to the main layer, yeah, I've been looking at that little white line wondering if that's part of the building or a scratch, but I'm going to get rid of it anyway because I find it a bit distracting. Again, just the brush tool, the normal paintbrush tool is the go-to for this. Now I've saved that black and white, and I thought I'd give Colorize a go. And this is what it does automatically. It's okay, it's not a bad start. So without touching anything, and then making sure that I output it as its own color layer here, on a new layer, it'll just put the color information that it's generated on a separate layer. There. I don't always colorize pictures. I don't find that it does a great job, and it's a fair bit of work, and it's a pretty hard thing to get right. So making sure my color picker is on current layer only. Now when I select colors, I'm only selecting the colors from that color layer and not any luminance from the image below. So I can start to paint here and there to try and true up some of these areas of color. You can see it's sort of very green there, but then very blue on the other side of that little bush. I'm also not loving how flat the green is of the grass. Some of that's a little unnatural looking. doesn't pay to be too careful with some of these edges either. A little bit of colour bleed from one shape onto the next is always good. Helps the image look a little more natural, in my opinion. Fixing up some areas where the colours bled onto skin tones. So I'm at about 50% opacity here with my paintbrush, and I'm just painting colour, selecting colour and painting colour on that one layer. So I'm not affecting the underlying image in any way. I'm also going to try and take this baby's outfit away from that peachy pinky colour because it's a bit unrealistic, clashes a little bit with their skin tones. Now here's a thought. This is something I do sometimes. I'll find an image that has a rough colour palette similar to what I'm working on. Put that above in a new layer. Set the mask to black. Setting it again to colour, so I'm only really painting colour on this layer, and then using a black and white mask, revealing little bits of that new photo throughout. And what that does is it brings a little colour variation. You can see all those leaves are the same green. So just picking and choosing where I'm painting my mask, I'm revealing that market garden photograph on top and introducing some of its colours into this photo. Now it's a bit garish. I do actually go through a little bit later and modulate this a bit. But for now, that takes that really flat green and makes it far more dynamic. Again, on this side, I'm just going to introduce some variations in tone, or variations in colour, I should say. Not all of this is successful, so you kind of want to paint some in, rub it out, go back, come back again. Just work your way through. I like some of these tones it's introducing to this bush up here. Not there too much, but generally speaking, it just brings a bit more life to the palette. This is me just flopping the mask around to white paintbrush so I can remove some of that. You can see that that's just taken some of that really flat green-blue colour and just changed it up a bit. Here's another image just of grass that I found online, and again I'm going to grade it a little bit and then swing it over to color on the layers here, put a mask on, change it to, put it in the right position. Change it to color. Clear the mask and then just reintroduce it with a white paintbrush where I want. Again, just trying to knock some of that sameness out of that sort of blue-green kind of color in the AI put into the grass. Now I'm going to select those 3 layers and create a new group from layers and call it color, and then I can play with the whole grouping of color separately. I think a little desaturation on it is actually nice. So here's some hue and saturation layer, which basically negates all those colors. Turn it down just a little bit. And then in the mask, I can paint the saturation down in areas that I feel are maybe too bright or too colorful, keeping the color in the center of the frame. But then I thought, why don't I just use a grad? Using a circular gradient, can't speak. Drag this out like that, so that then you get a nice soft fall off from the color in the center to sort of a more muted palette for the garden. The nice things about these new gradients in Photoshop Beta is you can just keep modifying them like this, move them around and pick them up. In the version prior that wasn't possible. One more level adjust, one more grade, just putting a little bit more darkness towards the edge of frame. Just to further draw focus to the subjects in the center. So there you have it. I think this was much more successful as a black and white image, but the color was an interesting exercise anyway.